and they had come out and they were going around, and he was in front of her by 2 seconds, and a mortar came and got her. So he's trying to get to her, and he can't because the snipers are shooting at him every time he moves. So for 24 hours, that man sat there and watched his wife die. We did a video not too long ago about my first trip to Ukraine, and now I'm going to talk about my second trip. And so this one was far different. First, there was 5 of us going together instead of 3, the original 3 plus 2. And for me, this trip was going to be shorter. As we get into Chisinau, Moldova on Wednesday afternoon, we stay at one of the local churches, and one of the local, this time we had a different chauffeur, not a translator. So not a translator. Thursday we're going to go to Odessa because we have medical supplies that are going to the military medics. We have 10 large bags because each person can take 2. We have them in the back of the van, so off we go, 6 of us. And it's about a 2-hour drive, I think, from Chisinau to the border. And you get to the border, and it's just basically like a huge parking lot. You're going this way, they're coming this way, and in between you've got buildings and buildings here. So we come through, and you have to go out of Moldova and into Ukraine. Now, when we had come in Wednesday night, we went through customs at the airport. They took our bags. They opened them just like last time. They checked with the paperwork we had like last time. But then this time they let us take them with us. And immediately I'm like, what? Wait a minute. Last time we didn't get to take them. Last time they had to go to a securing place. That's the best way to put it. A broker. Whatever they do there, I don't know exactly, but after that, everything is sealed up. You have a document so you can take to the border. Well, they let us go with the suitcases. So the next day, off we go. And we get there, and they're like, where's your paperwork? Well, here's what we presented to customs. Now, that's not my job. That's somebody else, a leader in the team. And we were at that border probably 6 or 7 hours. We don't have the right documents. So now we do have one person in the van that speaks Russian, and then we have someone on the phone that's helping, and you've got people from Moldova telling us no, Ukraine telling us no, and eventually, after about almost 7 hours, they're just not going to let us through. So we turn around and we go back to Chisinau, but this time we go back to the airport to try to figure out what happened there. So when we get there, we meet a man that can translate, understands what's happening. They go in, they're talking. About an hour and a half later, they come out. Well, we still need these other documents. So then they're working on these documents and everything. And so Friday morning, we think we've got everything, we've got it all together. Everything that they requested. We take off again, another 2 hours to the border. And we get there, and now Moldova, the best I understood, because I don't understand their language, we got to move forward. Then Ukraine. Nope, you don't have the right documents. So we sat there, and eventually they tell us, go back to this one spot. They're going to open all the suitcases up and take pictures. That's fine. Just do it so we can go. On Friday, we had already had places scheduled to go to. So that's out. This is Friday. We're sitting at the border. Well, eventually, I look over and I see someone I know sitting at the border, and they're a missionary in Odessa. And I'm like, there's so-and-so. And so he comes over the van, and what are y'all doing? What are you doing? And he gets through the border, but he walks back, and things are starting to kind of go downward. It's like, no, we don't think we're going to let you go through. And they're like, we think you need to go. And I'm like, wait, I want to go with him. He's going to Odessa. I want to go with him. So they text, no, he don't have room. So I'm texting the missionary in Odessa saying, they're not going to let us through. And the next day was really important for me to be there because we were going to a village called Myrna. I had been there before. There'd been a lot of work going on, and it was just important that I be there. And so the missionary says, just get out, walk across, I'll come and get you and one of the other people, because we was going to be together with him that day. So about that time, I'm trying to tell the driver, who is kind of being yelled at from either the Ukrainian or Moldovan, to get out, just get out. I'm like, stop, let me out. They wouldn't let me out. At this point, they're like, just leave. So we go to a different border crossing, and I'm not quite sure what the purpose was, because we're going to face the same thing, but it was decided by the group, we're going to go to the other one. We're just not going to declare anything. I'm thinking, okay, yeah, when they open up that back door with 10 large suitcases and we're not declaring anything, I'm like, whatever, I'm just the rider, I'm not the driver. And they did the same thing. By this point, it's been flagged that we've already been over here at the first checkpoint, or the border crossing, the day before and just recently. So we had to take the 10 bags and store them. We actually stored them at a children's home where the driver had been helping and working with in the past. And they were going to hold on to the items for us just so we could get across the border. And then it took over almost 2 weeks before they were able to get the same bags and go to a different border crossing, but this time it was just 2 people going through, and they had no problem at all. No other documents. They even asked them, what's wrong with what we have? And they're like, nothing. We don't know why they didn't let you through. So that's, yes, that one there. So we got through. And on a Saturday, we went to the village of Myrna. And so Myrna is between Nikolai and Kherson, somewhere in between there. And in that area, it would look like a state highway, a lot of agriculture, not a lot of trees. And that area, until November of last year, had been occupied by the Russians. And Myrna, where it's located, it's just a small community, a farming community. And we were able to walk around through there and just actually see how close the Russians were to their village. And so on one of the streets, this time someone had donated 10 the cast iron wood stoves that you could cook on with a flat top. And we had brought those out in 3 vans and different people, and with no particular person in mind, who needs it. And so we met a gentleman that he said, well, my neighbor, I think she could use one. So he hops in one of the vans and he takes us around to that first street that we'd never been on. And on the north end, I can't say north there, on one end, the houses were okay, but as you kept coming down the road, it was like, wow, just complete destruction. And so we stop at this house, and he gets a hold of the lady, and she brings us in past her gated, it's a locked gate, even though half of the wall is gone that goes into her house. Her house is just obliterated. She had left her home and went to Nikolai and had been there for a while, and she just couldn't do it no more. She wanted to be home. So she came back to live in her cellar. And she's by herself. But the cellar had mold. So she couldn't handle it. So she goes back and lives into a shed. It has a little heater in it and a place to put where she can lay down. But all of her things are on it. Mm-hmm. That's where she's living. Now, some of the houses have electricity now, whereas before they didn't. So if they have electricity, that means they have running water. Hers doesn't. So the gentleman that took us to her said, come meet my neighbor. He says, well, yeah, my house is back this way if you want to see it. So we go to it, and he unlocks his gate, and we go in. His house, absolutely obliterated. And I was actually using my phone filming while that gentleman and the missionary were speaking in Russian. And then it's translated. They were having, him and his wife needed to get out of the house and either go to the cellar to a basement area. And they had come out and they were going around, and he was in front of her by 2 seconds, and a mortar came and got her. So he's trying to get to her, and he can't because the snipers are shooting at him every time he moves. So for 24 hours, that man sat there and watched his wife die. And he had just been back a week. But that's his home. He can't stay there right now, but that's where he wants to come back. So he, at that time, because they're under occupation, and for him to get out, he just had to get out the best way he could. He took his wife's body and he wrapped it in a tarp. And there was a hole near his home where there had been some sort of mortar or something. And he laid her in that hole and covered her up.
That's going to stick with him for a long time.
It'll be there forever. He lost his wife. He was pointing over this way. He said, well, over here's where our cattle was. And they made cheese that they shipped to Italy. He had been a businessman elsewhere where he had 40 employees at one point, but they had decided to, move out to the country type thing and enjoy their latter years. He walked us through. He showed where he had the grain that he had just bought for his cattle and things, and then walked us through another area, and he did come back when he could and exhumed his wife and buried her properly. And I said this before, you don't have to know the language to be a help to them. He's standing there speaking to us with really only one of us understanding the words he's saying, but he's got tears. And I just reached over and I gave him a hug. And that's all I could do, but he'll not forget that either.
Yeah.
He'll not forget that people came and said, we care about you. Because their stories is just as important as mine is. Their lives are far different than mine. It's hard to complain about anything after you've been there. You see the one lady that's living there by herself in just a little shed.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? And I was asking the missionary, I said, how do we help? I said, the first thing is you got to clean everything out, but where are you going to put it? They don't have haulers like we have here. They have farmland. Do you dig up in the ground? Because their homes are built of cement, either cement or cement blocks. They're not, of course the roof is wooden, but the houses themselves are not that way. So you've got all this debris just piled up. You can't even build anything. You can't put nothing back until you've cleaned it out. And the missionary said to that particular man, listen, we're going to be here for a couple of hours. What can we do? Just some little something. He says, I don't know. It's so overwhelming. I don't even know where to start. And that's so true for them out there.
Yeah.
They're just trying to exist day to day.
Yeah.
Because the war's still going on. Just this morning, I listened to a video of a couple that's in Kherson, which is deoccupied, but the Russians are on the other side of the river that borders the city. And she's like, can you hear that? And there's bombing going off. So it's still very real over there. The need is still real, but we don't hear much of it here.
Yeah, I think one thing that I've kind of started to learn fairly recently even that I think applies here is when people don't know what they need help with or don't ask for help, just find something obvious to help them with. It may not be what they need help with the most, but it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
It's better than not helping at all.
That's true. That's true. Whether it's something that they need, we took out dishes because everything had holes. We took out pails just so they could get water. things we don't think, a clean set of sheets. There was the one house in February when I was there. A couple weeks later, a group went out, and there was a house where there was no roof, but people were living in it. And I think it was Samaritan's Purse had provided the blue tarps or the blue plastic, and so they put a roof on it. And I remember looking at the windows, they were all busted out, and I thought, they're living in this. Well, this time they have windows of sorts, okay? Not like we do, but, and yeah, they have windows of sorts. And one couple took us in. Yeah, the house has a lot of problems, but they have one room that's warm. And you know what? They're happy with that. It's like, well, we went from this, and now we're here. I'll tell you, this is kind of a funny part of it. So while we were over there where the Russians had been, there was big shells about this big. I thought, yeah, that's really cool. I mean, they were already used. So I picked one up, and I didn't think much about it, and I threw it in the van that we had rode up in, because I was in another van at that point. So when it's all said and done, and we're having to go back to Moldova and cross the border, because so next day we're going to catch the flight back. Well, the guard opens the van door, and he looks down, and he picks up that shell. And he starts in. He's like, what is this? Where did it come from? And our driver's like, I don't know. He's like, it's not mine. He's like, but it's your car. It's not my car. It belongs to the church. So-and-so drives it. So-and-so drives it. And everybody's looking around, and they're like, oh, is it yours? Is it yours? Did you do this? And so I thought, they're all the time telling me I just need to not talk and tell things. So I thought, I think I'm just going to do that this time. And they looked at me, and I just kind of shrugged. I thought, I'm not going to admit to this Ukrainian guy that I picked it up back there where the Russians were at. It can just sit right there. And eventually it was taken out and done something with. And later on, the driver was showing me an older folks home. We had went to get the packages or the bags. And he said, do you want to go over across the street and see this type of nursing home? I said, sure, because he had worked in there. And as we're going through the locked gate, I said, oh, by the way, the bullet was mine. He's like, I don't know why they were so upset about it. It'd already been used. It's not a big deal. Yeah. But yeah, that bullet, we got to sit for a while. So you don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
This time in Odessa, we had electricity the whole time. It was not like before. On that Tuesday when we left Odessa that night, we were at a dinner with a group of people, and one of them got an alert saying, you need to pray for us, because right now they're sending rockets into Odessa, and two of them actually made it in. One hit a Russian Orthodox monastery. The best I understand, there's in that region, there's two types of Orthodox. There's the Russian, and then I guess maybe the Ukrainian, and there's a huge difference. And I do know a while back there was something going on about Zelensky, their president, that he was persecuting Christians, and people were starting to get in an uproar. That's not what he was doing. He was going into the Russian Orthodox churches in certain areas, because it wasn't being used for a church. It was for other means, and he was having those people arrested. But it wasn't because of church affiliation. It was other things that was going on there.
I seem to vaguely remember hearing something about that.
Yeah. We hear, oftentimes, if I get news of something that's like, nah, I don't understand this. Romania borders Moldova. And a while back, Romania they came to the border with their military against, right there with Moldova. And I thought, well, what's their problem with Moldova? So I sent to the missionary, I said, I don't understand. They had tanks there. I said, I don't understand what's going on. And it had nothing to do with Moldova. It had to do with the fact that the Russians are trying to come in,
Hmm.
and if they come through Moldova, which does not, I mean, they do have a military, but I don't know if they have any type of equipment necessarily. So they weren't against Moldova. They're just trying to be proactive that if Russia comes through, if Russia takes Ukraine, I mean, they're not going to stop there. And so the day that we left, the day that they sent missiles in and where they hit in Odessa, was also the day that Poland had given, I think, 4 jets, fighter jets, to. So anytime there's outside help coming in, it's like Putin wants to punish, Ukraine for getting that help.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just almost a given. Uh, and like I said, the fighting is still very active. Um, but the Ukrainian people are not going to quit.
Yeah.
They are tired. That's why it's important that people go. It's great that you send money. And if people pray, that's wonderful. But people need to go so they don't feel like they're forgotten.
Yeah.
Because it would be real easy. It's a totally different world. I think about them every day. I think about the people. I talk to someone from there every day. How are y'all doing? What's going on? What are the needs?
Yeah.
As a widow woman working 2 jobs, boy, it breaks my heart. It's hard because I don't have the funds. I don't have the ability to help everyone. I know a young man that was just basically drafted, okay, family. Over there, their military does not provide them everything they need. Why? Maybe it's just because of the war and they don't have the ability.
Yeah, they probably
So
don't.
it comes out that this young man, he needs this, about $500. That's what it's going to take to get him what he needs. Okay, in one sense, $500 is not a lot. But in another sense, when you're working 2 jobs, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, $500. So for me, I've personally put it out, hey, this guy needs this. But you know what? He's not the only one.
Yeah.
That's the sad thing.
That's-
Everyone that goes in, they need boots or they need a bag or they need certain jackets or they need clothing.
Yeah. If everybody needs $500 to be equipped, that's a lot.
Yes, it does add up. But I don't know everybody.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying that in a mean way. It's just I don't know all of them, but I know this man.
Yeah.
I know his wife. I know their children. So if it's put before me, then I'm going to kind of like, hey, everybody, this guy needs this. This is how you can help. And that's how each person gets a little bit of help. Somebody takes an interest.
Yeah. So when you were there, did you find it easier to communicate with people? Were you understanding things better than you did last time?
I learned how to use an app. Okay. And so we would sit there and I'd say what I needed to say and then they would say it. But the lady that went this time with me, she says, okay, so when you type it in English and it puts it in Russian, you want to reverse it to make sure it's saying what you want it to say. Yeah.
I've learned to do that.
I didn't know this and I'd been sending messages for a month. So,
Yeah.
yes, so the businessman sent me a picture of him and 2 of his workers. And just the picture made me laugh. And so I said, that picture made me laugh. I said, it reminds me of the 3 Stooges. And then I'm thinking, they probably don't even know who that is. One, they're younger and they're in the, But so I flipped it around to read what it said. And it said, that picture made me laugh. It reminded me of the 3 Stupids. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm glad I did not send that. So now I'm thinking, oh my word, what have I been sending for the last month?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's the thing. I mean, they know you're probably using a translator, so I'm sure they've got patience and don't try to read into things that don't make sense.
Yeah. So in that aspect, being able to communicate with them more, I learned a new word that I actually remember. And that's the thing. I would hear the words, I would say the words, but if I'm not going back and forth with it, I just don't retain it.
Yeah.
But there was a word named dobro, okay? I don't know if there's an instrument or whatever. Dobro. It means good. All right. So this lady and I are talking back and forth, and she answered me, And I looked at her, I said, Dobro. And she looked at me like I had horns. I'm like, I think I said that wrong. So when the young man comes in and says, knows Russian, I said, how do you say good in Russian? And he tells me, I said, no, that's not what I learned. And I said, what is this word? And I said, Dobro. He said, that's Ukrainian for good. I'm like, well, shoot. The young man that went the first time and this time, he's learning Ukrainian. I don't want to learn Ukrainian. I want to learn Russian.
Yeah.
So he taught me Dobro, and I didn't realize that's not Russian. So the one word I learned this trip that I can really remember is Ukrainian.
Yeah.
So one more funny, okay? Then I'll quit. The first trip, we're at this church, and this lady comes up and is talking to me, of course, through the translator. And so out of the clear blue, she says, you look good today. Now, she's never met me. So the translator she says, you look good today. And I'm thinking, what do you say to that? And I said, well, I guess it's better than looking bad. So he repeats it, and she just starts laughing, and she thinks that's so funny. But I'm thinking, how do you tell somebody they're looking good today? I just never did get that one, you know.
Yeah.
But I thoroughly enjoyed the people over there. But then, you know what? I enjoy people here. I've mentioned I have 2 jobs. They're both with elderly. One where I stay with a lady all night long, and the other one, though, I get to go work anywhere from 2 to 4 hours with different clients, different needs. Absolutely enjoy all that because all the different people, all the different stories.
Yeah.
You know, and it's
People
whether
are
it's here in America or there in Ukraine. But I know that's where I'm supposed to go. I am trying to learn about how to set up a blog, and I hope within a couple of weeks I'll have it set up and going.
Well, thank you for meeting with me again.
Thank you.